This very special holiday episode of The Four Top, actually it's the Two Top this time, was brought to you by Conegliano Valdobbiadene Prosecco Superiore DOCG. Not all Proseccos were made the same, and later on in this episode, you will hear more about this beautiful UNESCO World Heritage designated region. Except no substitutes, people, and please take note because Martin and I get a little too excited about these amazing wines and we talk too fast, and I want to slow down here and make sure you know the full, proper title of the source of the very, very best Proseccos. That's Conegliano Valdobbiadene Prosecco Superiore DOCG. This campaign was financed according to EU regulation number 1308-2013. And now, let's roll this show.
You know, Katherine, we talk about dating in the wine industry, but you should never fall for a tennis player. You know why?
Oh, no? No, I don't know why.
Because love means nothing to them.
Oh, that's true. I never was good at tennis. Hello and welcome to the Two Top. I'm your host, Katherine Cole.
And I'm your host, Martin Reyes. Oh, excuse me. Hold on. Martin Reyes, MW. And
you know what else I like is I like the French Martin.
Martin Reyes.
Martin.
Yes. And this is the third of 3 special holiday season episodes in which we turn your favorite wine podcast, the Four Top, into a Two Top. Just so we can let loose and gab about our trade.
That's right. And this episode will run just before Christmas and New Year's. And do you know what season that is, Martin?
What?
It's called cuffing season. And I only just learned this term. I know. It sounds very naughty. I just learned this term from our senior producer, Izzy Kramer, who, by the way, this podcast would not exist if Izzy did not keep us all on track. She has all the spreadsheets. She's amazing. And she told me about this term cuffing season. And it does refer to the idea of handcuffs that people opt into in the colder months. That is, people want to settle down into long-term, cozy relationships so they can stay warm in the cold months and they don't have to celebrate the holidays alone. So apparently people pair up this time of year. And because of that, we thought we could talk about personal relationships in this episode.
Wait, hang on. So it's called, I've never heard this term before. It's called cuffing.
It makes me not all that interested in being in a relationship when I'm imagining that. I mean, my goodness.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm thinking that for those of us who work in this industry, it really is a family affair.
That's right. You know, every once in a while when you're talking to someone at a party or something and they'll say, I don't even really know what my dad or my mom did growing up. I knew they had an office job, but I wasn't really sure what they did. And I always find that funny because if you work in the wine industry, everyone in your family knows what you do. I mean, on the one hand, you bring samples home and all of your adult relatives and your partner are all very happy about that. But at the same time, you spend a lot of time traveling, going to wine dinners. You're strongly encouraged by your employer to post about wine on social media, which can get pretty tedious. Your kids start to taste wine and make jokes about wine. I mean, it's an all-consuming industry to be in.
It is. My daughter, she's 8. She's made 2 or 3 vintages of her own Chardonnay in a little small bottle that she just says like, oh, this is the first time. It's like, it's really sweet. And then after a few days, like, it's not so sweet, Papa, what's happening? And then eventually it's like, this tastes like that stuff that you've given me tastes of when, and okay, and she gets it, right? So it permeates everything, right? Whether you're a winemaker, whether you bring samples home, just like you said, it is everywhere. And then your friends, and then the people that you can relate to more because they're in the same trade with you. I have this term where whenever I have friends who are over, I have a term like, oh, this Susan, oh yeah, is she in the wine trade? No, she's a civilian.
Yeah.
That's what I often say, because you kind of feel like you're in the trenches with them.
That's true.
But you kind of do feel like there is the in the industry, in winemaking and craft. And then there is those who are, the civilians.
Well, I mean, not to go off on a big tangent, but I do feel that our undervalued and amazing stewards, vineyard stewards who work in our vineyards, they really are in the trenches doing amazing physical work just to get
Right.
these grapes harvested. And for them, it's all consuming too. They have to, either leave their families or else bring their whole families as they move throughout the country working at different farms. So no matter what part of the industry you're in, wine is your life if you're in it.
It absolutely is. Yeah.
Sure.
So then what happens? This is what we're talking about. For a lot of us, it doesn't start at 9 and end at 5 p.m. It continues. It follows you into dinner, the weekend parties. It follows you, speaking from experience, it follows you into your kid's play date or your preschooler's friend's birthday party where you go to a swimming pool and everyone expects you to bring some booze. Yeah.
Bring wine.
And
Mhm,
especially during
mhm.
this past recent Halloween, everyone's like, "Hey, we're not supposed to pay for any of the Halloween decorations because you bring all the free booze, right? Booze."
Mhm.
Oh, sorry, that was an old Halloween joke there that I had to squeeze out last minute. But the point is, like, then what does that do to your personal life? We talked about this a little bit in terms of the work-life balance and a few episodes ago. But then, what about dating life? What about familiar pressures? What about spouses and dates and events and dinners? And these are all
Mhm.
things I think I want to talk about right now.
Yeah.
Dating inside versus outside, dating in a small industry where everybody knows your name and everybody then does business with you or your friend or your partner or your cousin or your neighbor down the street. You put alcohol into the mix. And then what happens? And then what are the ramifications of all that stuff, you know? And then when you're married and you bring spouses or your dates to events and dinners, there's a lot here.
It would, if you're not dating or, partnered with someone who's also in the industry, I think it makes a lot of sense to be with someone who really appreciates wine, because if they don't, they're going to be dragged along to a lot of things and thrown together with a lot of strangers who are extremely passionate about this one subject to a point of being almost fanatical. You and I were chatting recently, and you said, it'd be really nice to bring someone from the wine industry to this dinner that I have to go to
Mhm.
because I know it's going to run late. And,
As opposed to somebody who was not.
yeah. And people are just going to be sitting around talking about harvest for 4 hours.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you put yourself in a situation where you are the person who is the date, who's coming into a party full of lawyers, where everyone is going to talk about law,
Well, but here's the superpower we have as people in the wine industry.
what's that?
You and I walk into a party full of lawyers, they're all like, oh, yeah, the wine people are here. Here's what I like to collect. Tell me about my cellar. Here's what I'm trying to. Oh, do you know anything about Rioja? I'm trying to learn about Rioja right now. Blah, 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 blah. Doctors, lawyers, any profession that is fairly lucrative, they love having us there. It's kind of an unfair equation, right? Like, you can take a wine expert to a lot of different types of social milieus, but it's hard to take other people into the wine milieu unless they're passionate. They don't have to be in the industry, but they have to be
Mhm.
passionate. They have to collect or, be someone who follows, at least goes to wine bars and kind of follows the trends. By the way, I don't mean to be reductive. I don't mean to say that people are not welcome. I just mean they're going to be bored by us. That's all. Since I've been divorced, I haven't dated that much, but I did date a really delightful gentleman who owned a vineyard for a while. And actually, we went to Champagne together, and he owned a wine brokerage. Yeah, and I will say it was really lovely to, taste wonderful old wines together and have really deep conversations about the provenance and the history, and get together with some pretty cool wine collectors who were really generous in sharing their amazing collections, and they wanted us to taste because they wanted to get our opinions. That was really fun, I have to say. And going to wine events with this individual was, it was easy because I didn't have to go around and introduce this person to everyone in the room. This was an industry person, so yeah, it worked well in that way. Now, was it meant to be? No. But I did see the advantage of, you know, keeping your lane within your industry. I could see how that works very well for some people. probably a lot of people in this industry.
There's this fun aspect of our career that's there, which means that people who are not in it, if they have some degree of interest, and if they want to learn, then I feel like they're accepted. It's an interesting topic to consider whether the dating scene in our industry has anything specifically wild and crazy and novel and unique to it that might not exist in other industries.
Probably. I haven't dipped my toe in deep enough to know. I'm curious.
We should clarify, Katherine.
We are colleagues. We are colleagues and buddies.
Absolutely buddies and colleagues.
Which is good because we can give each other advice about these kinds of things.
This very special holiday episode was brought to you by the Conegliano Valdobbiadene DOCG, a dedicated and traditional community of producers in northeastern Italy, just about 30 miles from Venice and about 60 miles from the Dolomites. It's a region with 190 sparkling wine houses and 300 growers.
Wow. And speaking of the people of this region, it's a group of wineries led by women.
Woohoo.
The consortium president is Elvira Maria Bortolomiol, and that is amazing that she is the president of the consortio. And, 40% of the wineries are staffed or led by women, and 40% of those women are under 40. So it's a 40-40-40 wine region all about women.
And did you know that the Conegliano Valdobbiadene is home to Europe's first wine road, this picturesque Prosecco road that weaves through mountains, villages, revealing dramatic vistas that you can enjoy through hiking and biking trails. It's pretty cool.
I love the landscape there. I think I've said that before. And Conegliano is also home to Italy's first wine school, established in 1876, where the Charmat or Martinotti method for making fresh sparkling wines was famously perfected.
I knew the Charmat, but I didn't know the second name, Martinotti.
I believe Martinotti is from the Conegliano school. I think he perfected the method that Charmat developed. Whew, I hope I'm remembering that right. It's been a while. Speaking of wine education, I am tasting a couple of wines that I thought I'd pull out because their names make me think of people and relationships. One of them is La Gioiosa et Amorosa, which translates as joyful and loving. It's from La Gioiosa Winery, which is certified by the World Biodiversity Association. The other's from a winery called Valdo, and the wine is called Amor Soli, which means to love alone. Amor Soli is a declaration of love to the hills of Valdobbiadene. And from this wine, I am getting some nice fresh notes of lime. I'm actually getting a little bit of yeastiness. I wonder if there's a little lees situation. And then on the back label of the La Gioiosa, actually, I'll hold up these bottles. I love this bright yellow label on the La Gioiosa. It says extra dry, which I think might confuse folks who are first learning about Prosecco because it sort of means the opposite of what it sounds like.
Yeah.
So this wine, in fact, has 17 grams per liter of sugar, but it doesn't taste sweet. It tastes very balanced.
A little bit of insider baseball. 17 grams per liter is 1.7% of volume sugar. So it's not laden with sugar. It's less than 2% to sugar.
Yeah.
The percentages, even though they're small, can give a very pronounced sense of sweetness. So like once you're at 40, 50 grams or 4 or 5%, you take the zero off for the percentage, the wine tastes positively sweet. Wines tended to be sweeter many, many years ago. So this version of less sugar was seen as extra dry. But now, contemporarily, it's sort of anachronistic because we're talking about brutes and extra brutes that are even 7 grams and 5 grams and 3 grams and 2 grams of sugar, which is 0.2%, quote unquote, way drier than this, but the name stuck.
It's very confusing. Yeah, so dry is sweeter than extra dry. Well, that actually does make sense. And then brut is drier than extra dry, and extra brut is drier than brut. Anyway,
Exactly.
I will say this wine, this extra dry wine, it makes me think of the kind of spicy sushi I had earlier this evening. And these wines that do have a little bit of residual sugar and relatively low alcohol by volume, they actually are really beautiful with food. And Prosecco can be very versatile with food, and I think people are scared of having a little bit of sweetness in their wine, which honestly you can't even taste in this case. It really is a nice tool, along with the wonderful acid in these wines, to match with food.
Yes, and there's many different kinds of Prosecco. There's always been, but there's also some evolution in terms of the commercial relevance. There's a fun style that I recently enjoyed for the first time. It's called Su Lieviti. Mm-hmm. It's a traditional name.
They used to call it col fondo.
Col fondo, right.
But then they had to change it.
Yes, so col fondo is with the bottom, and the bottom, of course, of a sparkler, especially, that sediment falls to the bottom. So the little dusty aspect, the sediment over time, I think that's what you've called it, we've called it, but for whatever stupid trademark issues came up now, so the name changed to Su Lieviti, which means on the lees that we know that when we've been to any wine tour at a winery, there's that little cloudy puff of powder and the dead yeast cells and so forth. So there's that, which is a fascinating new-ish version of Prosecco.
Well, not new, because it's the same Prosecco that everyone's grandma and grandpa used to make, but now they're actually labeling it and like marketing it.
Commercially speaking, for the modern society, it's new-ish, but it's never been. It's been there since the first time that we ever made wine.
This is a Prosecco where the secondary fermentation actually happens in the bottle. So if you're into geeky wines and those natural wines, look for that Sui Lieviti on the label and that cloudy bottle. But anyway, I think the point being there's a lot of diversity in Prosecco, a lot of interesting wines to try, and some really lovely people in the Conegliano Valdobbiadene DOCG.
I think that this Prosecco version of Sui Lieviti is probably the most romantic of all Proseccos, because it's the most sedimental of all.
And on that note, this campaign was financed according to EU regulation number 1308/2013. Thank you so much, Conegliano Valdobbiadene. We love your wines. You know, one thing you and I have talked about quite a bit, Martin, in the moments after we stop taping is social media.
Yes.
That's another thing that plays in, it is annoying, I think, to people who are not in the industry when, in the middle of dinner, you keep having to snap photos of the bottle on your table, and it looks annoying. But it really is expected in this industry to have, especially if you're in journalism and media, to have a social media presence, to be constantly snapping photos, constantly supporting the industry, supporting brands. I'm sure it's annoying for those people who are not part of it.
Yes, and I'm looking at my screen right now, and I see bottles lined up on my kitchen table. For the record, those were bottles that I had to snap so I can keep track of what I'm tasting for billing reasons. But why do I feel like I need to explain that?
Because people who don't work in the industry think that we have like a drinking problem.
Yeah.
When in fact, I actually don't drink that much. I just am constantly taking pictures of bottles to make it appear that I drink more than I do.
Or to catalog either for yourself or for the winery that you're working with. This goes back to what we said earlier, where like it's life consuming. Like every portion of your life that's social, that's awake, that's in the evening, that's with food, that's with friends, can have this vibe seep in where you're like, oh, it's a wine that I brought from work. And that means that work can follow you. Then you find yourself taking pictures for work reasons. And then everyone's like, what are you doing? We've touched on that on another episode with the sparkling winos, right?
Yeah.
Around how they built a wonderfully thoughtful platform full of their content that's genuine, that is at once educational, at once entertaining, and how that can persist when you tap into the stories and you tap into the lessons. But the other side of that is where you're kind of stuck living that tendency 24/7. Mm-hmm. When you're on when you're working, and then at night when you are relaxing, the content that made you on is still following you.
We started talking about cuffing season. I feel like the wine industry is like golden handcuffs, right? It's like,
Yes.
how often do we say, oh, I got to get out of this industry? And then no one wants to leave because it's too much fun. Like I said earlier, I think part of it is that people love to learn. It's really fun to learn, and that feels good. I'd be curious to do an episode with some folks who have successful relationships within the industry.
Yeah.
And see how that works. Because to me, it seems like that might be the solution. But then again, the grass is always greener. But I think I've explained to you separately, Martin, that I come from a strange situation where I was married to someone who didn't believe that I had a real job and still doesn't believe that I have a real job. I think this is common. And we've spoken about this on an earlier episode of the Four Top as well, where, folks don't really understand this industry you work in and don't take it seriously. And that can be frustrating, if not psychologically harmful in some cases.
We're always saddled with the fact that we must deal with the reality of the intoxication element of our craft. Everything around this revolves around our senses being influenced by what we make, by what we drink, by what we sell, by what we write stories around.
Let's not forget about sexual harassment and sexual assault, which also happen a lot in this industry. It happened in restaurants, certainly been publicized in the media, and we've had guests on talking about that as well. And, alcohol plays into that. Of course it does.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah. Well, everyone, thank you for coming on this journey with us. As we got into our third season and as we developed, what might be the next season that's focused on the bitchin' and fascinating world of real deal, hard-hitting sustainability and climate action and wine that actually really gets you thinking.
Yeah, and Martin, I want to hold one of my Proseccos up and give you a little toast. Thanks for being my buddy and my colleague and my co-host. It's been really fun. Gosh, 3 seasons and getting ready to do 4. So
I'm getting all warm and fuzzy. Where can we find you, Katherine?
Well, where can we find you?
I asked first.
Okay. Well, you can find me, Katherine Cole, at katherinecole.com, but I would rather that you go to thefourtop.org and look up our social media handles so you can get in touch with us and let us know what you thought of this crazy little 2-top caper we went on for 3 holiday episodes, what you thought of this season, and let us know if you have any ideas for our sustainability season, which is coming next.
You could just Google me. You'll find me. Martin Reyes. Martin. Just Google me. But more importantly, like Katherine said, Google or go to thefourtop.org.
Oh, and you know what I'd like to say before we go?
Yes, please.
Thank you to our sponsor for this special little mini-series we did.
Yes.
Conegliano Valdobbiadene. And I just want to say for our listeners who might want us to spell that, because we have been saying it real fast over these 3 special holiday episodes. It's C-O-N-E, like cone, just like those conical hills of Conegliano Valdobbiadene. C-O-N-E-G-L-I-A-N-O hyphen V-A-L-D-O-B-B-I-A-D-E-N-E. So if you need to Google that, in addition, that's how you do that.
Let's sign out, shall we? I'm signing out from the Napa Valley. Thanks so much for listening, everyone.
And I am signing out from the high-fiber, protein-packed city of Portland, Oregon. Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
This has been the Four Top Podcast. Katherine Cole is our executive producer. Izzy Kramer is our senior producer. And I'm Keelan King, sound supervisor. We are also assisted by audio editor Michelle Richards, editorial assistant Nick Toole, and media assistant Ruby Welkovich. Please visit our website, thefourtop.org, to learn more about us, listen to back episodes, reach out to us on social media, and purchase books written by our amazing panelists. And if you have not already subscribed to The Four Top on iTunes or Spotify, please do so and leave us a rating. Stay safe out there, and thanks for listening.
Oh, Oh, and one more thing, listeners, before you go, just a quick reminder that our regular season sponsor, ERATH, that's ERATH, is offering a special deal just to Four Top listeners. If you're looking to stock up on some delicious Oregon wines, go to erath.com/thefourtop, where you can pick up the Four Top 3-pack of Pinot Noir and Pinot Blanc and any other wines for 15% off. The promo code is 4TOP.